are indeed. We have a gentleman named Alice Cooper with us today.
Thank you. You know, after Heart Symposium, I always have Diet Coke. Why?
And Dali water is equally satisfying. We're doing excellent product placement.
I love it.
Can I call you Coop?
Please do.
All right. You know, Salvador Dalí, who has a lot of fans here today, they seem to be jointly Salvador Dalí and Alice Cooper fans, which I think is a pretty healthy combination. But Dalí also said school is out and decided he could teach himself to be an artist. And I think that's part of the heroism that we see in him. You might have had a similar background.
Well, the fact that Dali was probably an alien to start with. You know, when you think of guys that here's first place and here's second, third, fourth, fifth, there's this big gap, like the Beatles, Dylan, Dali. They're probably aliens. Someday they're going to go, but this is what we really look like, you know. Dali was not just the most amazing technical artist in oil, which was, I think, is probably the hardest. I was an art major. The hardest medium to work in as far as for realism. But his imaginations, you know, being able to do one painting and when you step back, it's another painting. You know, I mean, that's alien. That's not human at all. So he was from another place, I'm pretty sure. I was an art major. That was just came natural to me. My dad was a pretty good artist. And the band, the Alice Cooper band, before the Beatles, we were all 14 years old, 15 years old in high school. We were all in art class, and we were all Salvador Dalí fans. He was our hero. You know, we would sit and look at the paintings and go, this is impossible. This doesn't make any sense. You know, the band came later. We didn't become a band till later on, but every single one of the guys in the band were Dalí fans and art majors.
And it wasn't just the forms, it was probably the imagination that appealed.
And that's probably what led to the theatrics in the show. And that's what led Dali to us. Us being Dali fans, of course, parts of his surrealism rubbed off on us. So that when we were in a rock band, and here we are called Alice Cooper, and Alice is a villain. He's the Moriarty of rock, we decided. And we couldn't just do it as a rock band. It had to come to life. So when Dali saw our show, he saw a lot of himself in the show. There was crutches. I always used crutches on stage and things. And all these images that didn't quite fit what should be going on was very reminiscent to him of his paintings. So he said that Alice Cooper was one of his paintings come to life.
Well, yes, the admiration was very mutual. He said that you manifested confusion better even than he could.
Well, now that was a great line because I'd worked with him for 4 days on this, you know, on this hologram. And there's so many good stories with this because Dali was so out of his mind. First of all, he spoke in 5 languages. He would speak one word in Portuguese, one word in French, one word in Italian, one word in Spanish, and one word in English. So you'd get every 5th word. And this was for 4 days. And so there was, you know, I had no idea what he was talking about most of the time. But at the press conference, you know, when it was all done, everybody was there, and there was, you know, and they said, what was it like working with Dali? And I said, well, I didn't understand a word that he said the whole time, you know. And he says, perfect. He says, confusion is the best form of communication. And I went, you speak English? For 4 days, I'm trying to figure out what you're talking about, and you speak English? Of course, you know.
Yeah. You know, he was actually, one might even say, verbose. And his translator said that Dali would never use just one word when 2 would do. And so I suppose the Spanish, Portuguese, et cetera, don't fill out.
There was a certain amount, and this is not meant as an offense. There was a certain amount of carny con man in Dali that I really liked. I think a lot of his stuff that when he was painting, he would paint, let it come out to what it ended up being, and then explain the painting. I don't think he started out going, okay, no, this is going to be this and this. I think he looked at it and went, and then he would go off on these tangents of what this painting was. And it's like calling your shot after you make the shot.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Right.
But I loved that about him. I think he looked at it and then he went, this is, of course, the da-da-da-da-da-da, and went on and on and on, the egg of existence, and, you know. And I kind of really liked that about him, that there was a certain amount of, you know, his art was going on and on as it was being done. It was creating itself.
Yes.
And he was understanding it the same way that we were while he was doing it.
Interesting. Coop, how did you first, how did Dali approach you, and how did you get together in the start?
Well, he had seen one of the shows, and he wanted to do this first hologram. He had an idea for how to make a moving hologram, which of course nobody had even thought about at that time. A hologram was enough of a strangeness. To make one moving that you could turn and walk around and put your hand in and things like that was really pretty unique. And he says, "You are the perfect, model for this." And when they call, I said, "Well, of course." First of all, he called my manager, Shep Gordon, who I've been with for 43 years. And he kept calling him Mr. Blemmings. He says, "Mr. Blemmings." And Shep would go, "My name is Shep Gordon." He goes, "Yes, I know, Mr. Blemmings." And to this day, it was always Mr. Blemmings. And Shep says, "I'm Mr. Blemmings, I guess," And he said, "We'd like to meet you at the St. Moritz Hotel, or St. Regis Hotel in New York City." That was his favorite hangout. So Shep and I, we went down there and sat down, and it was like all of a sudden these nymphs came in. There were about 5 or 6 questionable sexuality things in chiffon came in, and I'm sitting there and looking at Shep going, okay. And then Gala comes in. Gala's in a full Fred Astaire tuxedo. Spats, gloves, cane, top hat, the whole thing. And I went, wow. She was the brains of the whole operation. She was, and she's Gala, and she sits down. And then the Dali. He comes in, he's got giraffe skin pants on. He's got a pair of like Aladdin shoes that go like this. A pair of socks that Elvis gave him that were these sparkly socks. The blue velvet jacket and this thing. The Dali is here. And I went, okay. And he sits down and he orders everybody a thing called a scorpion, which is, it's a shell with every kind of alcohol they have in one drink and an orchid floating in it. I was a drinker at the time, so I said, well, that's all right with me. I had to drink it. Wow. And then he orders himself a glass of hot water. He gets the glass of hot water. He reaches in his pocket. He pulls out a jar of honey. He gets a nice long stream. Then he reaches in his pocket, takes out a pair of scissors. And I went, Shep. He says, just go along with it. It's all right. All right, Mr. Blemmings. And at that point, he explained which I hardly understood at all, what he was going to do. And I said, look, I'll be a model for whatever you want me to do. You're Salvador Dalí. You're the master. Just tell me what to do, And it was about a 3 or 4 day shoot, because he had cameras that all the way around. He had to have cameras all the way around. I'm sitting on a pedestal, and then he brought in about $8 million in a tiara and this necklace, and he put that on me. And he said, I want you to sit here, and there's this Venus de Milo that he had built. And he says, it's your mic stand, or your mic. He said, but I want you to be eating it. I went, okay. But very slow. He said, because we're shooting it, and we had to shoot it maybe 100 times, so it was a very slow process. Mm-hmm. Second day comes in, with his hand behind his back, and he goes, "I have the Alice brain." And it's a brain that he had built that night, and it had a chocolate eclair running down the back, and it had ants crawling all over it that spelled out Alice and Dali.
Oh, my.
He says, "The Alice brain." I said, "That's great." I said, "Can I have it?" He says, "Of course not. It's worth millions." so, it was so much fun to be with because there was a certain amount of him that was very tongue-in-cheek humor. And he got that he was this character. I think that it was almost at a point now where he was so alone in his genius that he was a character that was not like anything on earth. But I think there was a sense of humor behind it,
Yes.
that he had a great sense of humor in what he was doing. But he would never let you know that. It was just, all behind the mustache and the madness in his eyes. And so you never knew when he was being funny and when he wasn't,
Well, as you know, this is the 40th anniversary of the first chromo hologramic portrait of Alice Cooper's brain.
Yes.
And so you're the candle on the cake for us to celebrate 40 years of this piece. But the question remains, you didn't buy the brain of Alice Cooper. So where is the brain of
The
Alice
brain is my golden fleece. I have been looking for this brain, and I can't find it in any museum. And I know that it's a paperweight on somebody's desk somewhere, in Port Lejat, Spain, or maybe it was in the fire. I hope not, but we've tried to track this brain down because, of course, that would be the thing that I would go after, because it would be the personal thing that Dali had for me, that would be my ultimate, piece of anything.
Golden Fleece.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
it really would be.
Yeah. So when you look back on your time with Dali, do you know any personalities like that today that are as riveting and as stirring in the art world?
I really don't. Andy Warhol was his own world, and he understood his sense of humor. He understood his sense of theater. I think all these artists have their own sort of like swirling theater that goes on with them. Warhol had his world that was this cynical kind of New York, pop. Everything was pop. Everything was art. Art is what you can get away with, is what his famous line was, which was interesting, considering the soup cans and everything that was just everyday objects. This is art to him, But Dali had his own theater. When you came into Dali, there would be Rolling Stone had a party, where we were doing, Annie Leibovitz came in and shot both of us for Rolling Stone, the cover of Rolling Stone. And his party moved with him. It was an entourage about the size of, the people here. But they were all, people thought we were weird at the time. We were nothing. We were kindergarten compared to these guys. They were just so in their own realm of whatever they were. And he was the focus. He was the nucleus of the madness. But she was the controlling of the madness. Gala had control of it. I don't think Dali ever paid a bill. Signed his name. We'd go to this big dinner, and he'd sign the tablecloth. That was it.
Yeah.
I said, "What do you leave for a tip? An initial?"
Well, sometimes he asks for change back.
Yeah, he would say, "I'll need $10,000 because that's." So, but every artist I've ever met has had their own theater swirling around them because they're artists and they create their own worlds. Peter Max has his own kind of creative world around him. And those people that are with him are satellites around that, are people that swirl around that, Dali just had a very big, I think people just were attracted to him and would come in and stick, and the entourage got bigger and bigger and bigger all the time,
Yeah. Well, when we look at those 40 years that have gone by, we see that you, like Dali, have had a multi-decade career. And there are many similarities, not only in the perfection of that work, the two personalities coming together in the hologram, but in many ways, you two are much alike in terms of speaking for your era, being ahead of things, having an immense following, bringing in different media.
Well, I've always loved the Dadaist idea. You know, I've loved the idea that you can have a stage show and you can have things on that stage that don't necessarily, I mean, they connect to it in a strange way. Like if you look at our stage tonight, there's a baby carriage with all kinds of swords stuck through it, you know. And to me, that's the right personality for the Alice Cooper show. That seems right.
It's very
There's two, things fighting each other there, but it works, you know. And everything that I get comes out of that baby carriage, and you can't wait to see what's in that baby carriage. And there is something really strange in that baby carriage, by the way. Yeah, somebody gave us this Wolfman baby. And they created it, you know, and it's like a wolf man. If a wolf man and a wolf woman had a baby, it's this cute little baby, but can't explain it. You had to be there. Every night I go in to grab a prop, and this thing's looking at me, you know, and I'm pretty sure some moment it's going to get out and walk around. But I use that baby carriage as sort of the focal point for everything. Everything comes from there. It pops out of there. And my kind of theater is like that too. I don't think it necessarily has to be explained. I like the audience to have their own interpretation of what Alice is. Salvador Dalí saw us as surrealism. Groucho Marx came to the show, and he brought Jack Benny, George Burns, Mae West, and Fred Astaire. And he says, "You're going to love this. It's vaudeville." And it really was. It was a surrealistic vaudeville. You know, I mean, we had the guillotine and the snakes and all this, and everybody in the audience was, "Oh, no, this is scary," you know. And George Burns over there going, "Yeah, I remember Gracie and I, 1923 in Toledo, you know, a guy with a guillotine and another guy had a snake like that, and, you know." And these guys had seen all this before on vaudeville in different forms. So they were not shocked in the least bit. Fred Astaire was watching my wife and the three other dancers dance, you know, because there was like a big production number where they were skeletons on one side, and when they would turn this way, it was black, and they would disappear. And then when they turn around again, they would show up again. So they kept, and he's going, "I love that." He said, "That's great." And so to them, that must have been the greatest compliment you could ever get, is having Fred Astaire complimenting your dancers. I mean, that would be like the Beatles telling us that they like our songwriting, you know. But I mean, Cheryl's going, "Fred Astaire is here," you know.
We all have our heroes.
Yeah, no, I mean, and again, now you're Fred Astaire, alien.
Pursuing that line of similarity a little further, so you both had this connection to Dada,
Yeah.
obviously. When you look at Dali on the What's My Line program, you've seen that on YouTube, and he says yes to everything. Are you this? Are you that?
Yes.
And they even get to, "Are you an athlete?" And he says, "Yes." So do we have a similarity here, Coop?
Well, it's, you know, people can't picture me playing golf in the morning and shooting even par and then going up and doing what I do on stage and then teaching Bible study. But I do.
But you do.
You know, I mean, I'm sort of the substitute Bible. If a teacher can't show up, but he calls me a week ahead and he says, "I go to Bible study every Wednesday morning," and he said, "I need for you to teach next week." Okay, you know. So that all those things together go, what?
Yeah.
That doesn't make any sense at all.
Except the answer is, like for Dali,
Yes. Yeah.
Yes,
Yes. I'll be
am.
there. You know.
We also noticed that with Dali, you know, he obviously was very theatrical and had this persona of swelling up for a crowd.
Yes.
And as a matter of fact, in the art world, that's been a problem for Dali because people mistook that persona for the artwork. He had a very private life as well, and he had his gala, and he had intimate conversations and great depth. And similarly, you have a life away from the theatrical profession.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I learned early on in my life. When I came to Los Angeles, the first people I met were the Doors, Jim Morrison and the Doors. Then I met Frank Zappa and the Mothers. Those were the two bands that were my big brothers. Okay, so I'm this, little fly on the wall. We're this little band that's sort of under the wing of these guys, and you're watching them. And Jim Morrison was again just another total poet, but most destructive person I've ever met. And you couldn't stop him from. He was on a track to kill himself on every level. The fact that he got to 27 was a miracle. It was like what he was doing to himself. And yet he looked like Adonis, and he was a poet. I never heard him do the same song twice the same way. He would change it every night to do a different poetic version of it. And you couldn't stop him from his direction, that he wanted to see what was on the other side. Frank Zappa, on the other hand, was this mad genius, that every single person from the Beatles to Dylan considered the maestro. He was the maestro. He was the greatest musician in rock, and he really was. These were my big brothers. I watched them all, not Frank, but I watched most of my friends die at 27. I mean, it's very unusual. Jimi Hendrix, Janis Joplin, Jim Morrison, Brian Jones. The list goes on and on. 27 was the expiration date for rock and roll. If you get past 27, you're going to do okay. I had to find a point when I got sober 30 years ago where I didn't know where Alice began, and I started where Alice began. I had to separate the two. Okay, Jim Morrison's image killed him. He tried to be Jim Morrison all the time. Jimi Hendrix's image killed him, trying to be Jimmy all the time. But this is when you burned out. Hope I die before I get old. That was the theme. And they did. So my generation kind of looked at that and said, well, I'd rather make 25 more albums than die at 27. So I have to find a way to separate this character that I've invented from me. And it took a while, but I mean, now I talk about Alice in the third person. I'll say, Alice shouldn't wear that. Our Cheryl and our kids we'd be watching TV, and Alice Cooper would come on, and they'd go, oh, look, Daddy, there's Alice Cooper. And yet these kids were born backstage. They knew how the guillotine worked. They knew the snakes personally. They knew every single thing. At 8 years old, Calico, our daughter, who's an actress now, would sit in the audience watching rehearsal, and she'd say, Dad, what? She's fourth song, lighting's all wrong. 8 years old, and she's already a ballerina because Cheryl's already taught her ballet. And she's going, I don't know what's wrong. It's flat. It's not working, And it's coming from an 8-year-old kid. And these kids knew what show business was. That they were brought up. Where's Uncle Axel? Where's Uncle Slash? Because those were their uncles.
Yeah.
So the showbiz life, it was something that I did have to separate from my other life. I really had to find a way to be able to get up in the morning and live this life and coach Little League and go to PTA and do everything that a dad does, and then that night become the monster,
I think there are hundreds of thousands of people who appreciate that you were able to make that separation and make those.
Well, I was that
albums.
close to joining the Boys. In fact, we do a thing in the show now called, I do a tribute to all my dead drunk friends. And it really is what it is. And these guys, I know their sense of humor, and I know they would get this. Alice gets wheeled out after he gets his head cut off. Cheryl plays the nurse now. And they wheel me out, and I'm in the graveyard of the Hollywood Vampires. And that was the name of our drinking club. And, the gravestones pop up, Jim Morrison, and we do Break On Through. And then it pops up John Lennon, we do Revolution. And at the end I go, ladies and gentlemen, all my dead drunk friends. And it's absolutely true. These were the guys that were legends that could not get past their own myth. They died living the myth.
Right. Yeah.
Well, I plan on doing that at about 103.
We see that.
But now they're going to say, if you've been drinking Diet Cokes for the last 30 years, please
Yeah.
check in.
Yeah, don't listen to that. Could we have a wish tree out in back? And I wonder if you would write for us a wish for the Dali Museum and this community that's come to see you today, that we could hang on that tree.
Yeah, absolutely.
Great.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Would you take a couple of questions from the audience?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
No math, okay?
While you're writing, we'll have our. Do we have mics for those questions? Or do we have very loud voices? I heard that. Yes. All right. Yes. Would you stand up and tell us your name and ask Alice Cooper your question? Can't. Oh, Jody.
I understand that the movie Cabaret had a very big influence. Is that correct?
There were three things that had a big influence on our career. Cabaret was way later. Barbarella, the movie Barbarella. But I'll tell you how. It was very interesting. We came up with the villain Alice Cooper. Rock and roll was full of a million Peter Pans and no Captain Hook. And I went, here I am. I'm ready. Our band was ready to break, and there was no rock villain. There was no, a person that you could say, that's rock's villain right there. Well, I had the face for it, I had the body for it, and we had the music for it, and we had the theatricality that went around it. I said, I'm the perfect choice for this. So we created Alice to be. Then it was, what's his name? And the very first name I thought of was Alice Cooper. I could have said Betty Johnson, I could have said anything, but Alice Cooper was the first name that came out, because I said, I want this character to have the same name as the little old lady down the street that makes cookies for the kids. That sits in the porch and knits. Alice Cooper, that's a perfect name for, Then I thought Alice Cooper, Lizzie Borden, Baby Jane, It had that rhythmic thing to it also, and it stuck. It just stuck, and pretty soon we were Alice Cooper. Then we were avid TV watchers. We were the greatest trivia. We could tell you anything about Leave It to Beaver. We could tell you anything about Dobie Gillis. But we also sat and watched West Side Story, Guys and Dolls. We were addicts to all these Broadway plays, which was very unusual for rock guys. And then we would listen to James Bond themes, John Barry, and we would just listen to it and go, whoa, 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 what was that? There was one little section in Diamonds Are Forever that was like, yes, that right there. So we spread ourselves out, Stockhausen, Sandy Bull, all kinds of things that rock bands would never listen to. And that somehow swirled into Alice Cooper because we listened to the Yardbirds and the Who, and also those were the bands we liked. But why not add all this in there? Baby Jane, Betty Davis. She's got this pasty white makeup on, and she smears the makeup on, and she's trying to look like a 9-year-old girl, and she's 82, right? And I went, oh yeah. I said, that's Alice Cooper right there. I said, that's what the face should look like. Really, like makeup's cracking.
Oh.
And it's really not right. It's not, this eye is not like that eye. It's all messed up. It's just not, most people would put on very, I go, oh yeah, there you go. And it was frightening enough because I was skinny and, And then we saw Barbarella. And we saw the Black Queen. And she stands up and she's in full black leather and she goes, shh, and switchblades come out of her arms. And I went, oh, that's Alice Cooper also. So that outfit with that face, yes. And that's really where it came from. When we decided what the makeup was going to be, it just felt, a clown, these things, because they look like fangs and they look like tears, but they're not. They're daggers, And this, I wouldn't want to see this thing come at me at night, you know. And at the time, you have to remember now, the scariest thing out there was probably, boy, for me it was the Partridge Family or something, you know. you know. But there was no frightening rock and roll. There was nothing frightening about rock and roll until we came along. So, I mean, we added that element of fear. My idea was this: if the Beatles walked into a party, everybody would go, "Oh, the Beatles." The Rolling Stones walked in, "Oh, the Rolling Stones." When Alice Cooper walked in, they would take a step back and go, "That's Alice Cooper. Do we really want to be here? I don't know," you know.
And then they would bow down.
And well, it took a long time for that to happen. But that's how Alice was born, was a combination of things that we liked. I've always said Alice Cooper's my favorite rock star. If Alice becomes my second favorite rock star, there's something wrong. Because I designed Alice to be, if I was in the audience, what do I want to see Alice do? Well, of course I want him to have a sword. In fact, I want him to have Errol Flynn's sword. Okay, so I got Errol Flynn's sword. The sword I use on stage is the sword he used in Captain Blood. Wow. So, I mean, you know, that's my sword, you know, and that gives me authority because I have Errol Flynn's sword. Do I want to? Of course I want him to have a snake. Yeah. If I was in the audience, I want to see Alice Cooper with a snake. Okay, we get a snake, you know. And that's how I designed Alice Cooper. Even to this day, whatever Alice I see on stage in a picture, I go, okay. And again, we talk about him in the third person. You know, I don't think he would do that. I don't think he would say that. No, I don't think he would. 50 years from now, hopefully somebody else is playing Alice Cooper. You know, I mean, I created him to be an American character, like Zorro or anything else. You know, so I'm just playing him right now. Later on, hopefully somebody else is playing him. Yeah.
What a nice answer to. Maybe someone in the back, on the far corner there. Stand up, please, and tell us your name.
My name's Connie Frostinson, and you can say no, but our 25-year-old son who's selling insurance is probably one of your biggest fans. I mean, he's like, this is vital for him.
Of course.
All your albums.
If there's anybody that needs insurance, it's me. Tell him that I'm well insured, but yes, I'll sign whatever he needs.
That was a quick question, so yes, sir. That's the last question here. Thank you.
Sorry, what? I quit drinking. Most people play golf and then start drinking. What I do is I quit drinking. I was drinking a bottle of whiskey a day. And I got up one morning, but I was never drunk. I was always on this golden Dean Martin high. I was never a mean drunk. I was always happy and, you know, just having a great time. And but it catches up with you. The little golden buzz becomes a dagger pretty soon. And I got up one morning, and I was used to getting up in the morning and having a couple of beers and maybe throwing up beer. This time I threw up blood. And it was like Doc Holliday, you know. And I went, uh-oh. And the first thought was, don't let my wife see this. Cheryl saw it and went, that's it, let's go. And I was in the hospital, you know, and because, I mean, I had pancreatitis. I had everything. I was drinking a bottle of VO a day, but I just sip. I never missed a show. If I was doing a movie, I knew all my lines. If I was working in a TV show, I did a thing with, you know, I knew everybody's lines. I was very, very professional. Drinking never got in the way of my art, of what I was doing. It was the other 22 hours during the day that I was drinking. But I was never mean. I was, you know, I was a very pleasant guy. But when it did catch up to you, the doctor says, I give you about 2 weeks. He says, everything in your system is ready to go if you don't get in the hospital right now. So I went in the hospital, and when I got out of the hospital, it was an interesting thing. The psychiatrist in the hospital said, so when you're on stage, how much do you drink in this? And I went, I never drink when I'm on stage. He said, well, when you're making a movie, when you're playing a character, what? I said, well, I never drink when I'm acting. He says, so let me get this straight. You're blaming everything on Alice Cooper, and he's not the alcoholic, you are. He says, Alice doesn't drink. The character you created when you're playing your character, yeah, he's sober. He says, Dr. Frankenstein is the alcoholic, not the monster. And I went, geez, you're right. I really didn't realize the fact that the character I created was the safest place I could be, was in that character. It was me who had the problem. So when I did finally get out of the hospital, I came out and the doctor said, okay, I want you to go to this AA meeting, and I want you to go to this, and I want you to go to this. I sat there and I waited for the craving. It never came. 30 years, it's never come. And every single doctor said, you're going to really collapse and you're going to really break down and have a drink. And I went, I don't think so. It's gone. Well, it's just gone, And I said, if you don't believe in miracles, I said, this was a miracle. And I said, I point to God, and I said, he totally took it away from me. It was an absolute miracle. And even the doctors had to agree. They said, look, you were the classic alcoholic. There's no way that you just don't drink anymore. I said, well, I don't drink anymore. And I never cheated. I never needed a drink. I just never needed one. So, but I did need to take up that time. I used to get up in the morning and watch, The Price is Right, with 3 beers sitting there drinking. Now I had all that time and I didn't know what to do. So I went, well, what takes 5 hours? Golf. And I told my wife, I said, I'm going to go play golf. And she goes, okay, go. Well, I went out there and I picked up a club, a 7-iron, and I swung it and I hit it dead down the middle. And I went, oh, that was wonderful. That was like addictive right there. I mean, I could tell that it was just as addictive as alcohol, because you always want to hit the next shot just as good as that one. I play 6 days a week for the last 30 years. Wow. Cheryl, I got up in the morning, Cheryl points to the club, she says, go, play golf, go. And then she teaches ballet. So we, our schedules never bump into each other. But golf really was part of my therapy, And I told her right up front, I said, look, I drank every day, right? Yeah. Well, I should play golf every day. She says, in some strange logic, that makes sense. And it did. It really did. I mean, it still has a certain amount of healing quality to me. And being compulsive, being, a person that it is addictive, it has become part of my lifestyle now, By the way, Cheryl, stand up.
Yes.
This is my wife. Cheryl is the gorgeous version of Gala.
Yes.
Okay. 37 years we've been married, and
that's fantastic.
Thank you.
And Cheryl said you've been on the road since May.
Yeah, we've been on the road. She plays the insane nurse tonight, and but she's with Joffrey Ballet and Hubbard Street Dance. She's like the master dance teacher. But she takes all this training and she becomes this insane nurse tonight with braces on her legs and everything,
This gentleman has one question here. Brad Morris, who is the scion of the Morris family that gave this collection.
Oh, how great! Right.
Practically asked my question. Did you ever meet Mr. and Mrs. Morris as part of your
No.
Dali?
I never did. No.
Isn't that
Yeah, and Dali would disappear. I mean, once you worked with him, then he would just gone, and then he would take that insane theater somewhere else, to San Francisco, and they would be there for a while, and then they would go somewhere else. And if you weren't working with them, there was probably no connection. You talk to their people and things like that, and Shep would get a call. I'd be sitting there, and he'd pick up the phone, and he'd go, yes, it's Mr. Blemmings. And I'd know who it was. It was Salvador Dali's people. We had to use permission one time for the Dada album to use a piece of one of his paintings, and they still were calling him Mr. Blemmings. It was like 20 years later. But no, never did meet them. No, even though I knew who they were, but they just never was in that.
Coop, we're going to give you 1
Who
second.
am I signing this for? Skip.
Yes. And then we are going to take you upstairs to see the hologram. And you're all invited to join us. We would ask that you stay in the auditorium until he gets out so that we can actually make our way to the third floor to the Huff Galleries to see the hologram.
And this is my wish for the...
For the museum and the community.
You want me to write it on here?
That'd be great.
Okay. I'm going to write, be the person your dog thinks you are.
All right.
Look at it. Doesn't matter what you do, your dog loves you. You know, you could be Charles Manson, your dog goes, oh, it's okay. You know.
Everybody's got to be somebody.
That's right.
Well, thank you for, let's express our thanks to Coop for being with us.
Thank you. Thank you.
Cheryl, you were sitting next to my wife, Laura. Yes. Okay. This is my wife, Laura.
Laura, how are you? Good
Laura,
to see
hi,
you.
nice to meet you.
So you're looking at Santiago El Grande,
That is
which was the dream that the King of Castile had, that St. James was going to lead the army on and defeat the Moors. And he shows like our geodesic dome, our morph dome over the top. He shows the Toulouse monastery that has that same structure. And that's the beginning of the pilgrimage to Santiago de Compostela.
That is just spectacular. I mean, when you look at, when you look at we went to see the Last Supper.
Yes.
You're not more than 3 feet away, and it looks like a photograph.
I know. It looks like you can see through
Amazing.
everything.
And the glasses on the table, you're seeing through the glasses.
Yeah.
You know.
Now, this is an hallucinogenic Dorian art. This is always our visitor's favorite painting. And he starts with the Venus de Milo, and that green shape there is also, when you look up from it, you see a chin. If you think of the green. So this is instead of St. Helena, Columbus is, that's gone. So he revises its history always. He had that epiphany when he was about 50 and decided that he was going to, instead of disconnect, he was going to reconnect world art. So this would be a way of relating modernism is a mistake. We're going to connect to the art of the past. The art of the past is about religion. History, it's about great themes. So he started these paintings in the late 60s and 70s, so he's 50 years old, and started painting one a year. He incorporates this historical.
See, that would take most people 5 years to do that. You know, that's, I mean, his amount of work is the incredible thing. I mean, when you think of all the sketches and all the oil, but I mean, all the watercolors, the sculptures, thousands of pieces. Yeah, just constant. And everyone's a master.